The night Marcus Hale pulled his boss out of trouble, the rain was falling so hard it felt like the city itself was trying to wash away its sins, and he didn't know yet that this moment would quietly rewrite his entire life. He only knew that his phone buzzed past midnight while his 8-year-old son slept curled like a comma beside him, and something in his chest tightened with the kind of dread he'd learned never to ignore. Marcus was used to emergencies, just not the kind that involved the woman who signed his paychecks and barely remembered his name. Before the story goes any further, take a moment right now. If you believe in kindness even when no one is watching, in second chances that arrive disguised as accidents, then please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Marcus had been a single father for 3 years, ever since a quiet hospital room and a flat monitor stole his wife away and left him standing alone with a newborn and a promise he didn't know how to keep. Life since then had been a blur of early mornings, packed lunches, unpaid bills, and exhaustion so deep it felt stitched into his bones. He worked as a night shift facilities supervisor at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown, a job that paid just enough to keep the lights on and not enough to ever let him breathe. His boss, Evelyn Carter, was known in the company as sharp, distant, and untouchable, the kind of executive whose heels clicked like warning shots down the hallway. Marcus had exchanged maybe a dozen sentences with her in 2 years, all of them forgettable, all of them professional. That night, the call came from an unknown number, slurred words barely making sense, panic tangled with alcohol. Marcus didn't even know why he grabbed his jacket and left his sleeping son with the neighbor he trusted with his life. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the quiet voice inside him that still believed doing the right thing mattered. He followed vague directions to a dim parking structure behind a closed restaurant, where flashing red and blue lights were already painting the concrete walls in warning colors. Evelyn Carter sat on the curb, shoes discarded, mascara streaked like she'd been crying for hours, an overturned wine bottle rolling uselessly near her feet. A police officer stood nearby, impatient, clipboard ready, already tired of the night. Marcus didn't ask questions. He didn't judge. He stepped forward calmly, explained he was an employee and a responsible adult, and somehow managed to de-escalate the situation with a quiet steadiness born from years of surviving worse. He arranged a ride, made sure Evelyn wasn't arrested, made sure her car was secured, made sure she got home without becoming tomorrow's headline. He sat in silence during the ride, watching the city slide past, thinking about his son's breathing, about the alarm clock that would ring too soon, about how kindness often cost more than cruelty ever did. When he finally returned home, dawn was already threatening the horizon. Marcus lay awake beside his son, staring at the ceiling, telling himself that this night would fade like all the others. He expected nothing. He needed nothing. Survival had taught him not to hope for rewards. The next morning at work, the air felt different, though Marcus couldn't explain why. His body moved on autopilot through mopped floors and repaired fixtures, his mind still heavy with the weight of the night before. He avoided the executive wing entirely, not out of guilt, but out of a deep desire to remain invisible. That's when the email notification arrived, short and direct, requesting his presence in Evelyn Carter's office immediately. His stomach dropped. He imagined termination, imagined rumors, imagined everything unraveling because he'd crossed some invisible line. When he entered her office, sunlight poured in through tall windows, illuminating a space that looked nothing like the woman he'd seen hours earlier. Evelyn was composed, alert, sober, her eyes sharp but softer than he expected. She didn't pretend not to remember. She didn't hide behind professionalism or convenience. She acknowledged the night, acknowledged the risk he'd taken, acknowledged the quiet dignity with which he'd acted when it would have been easier to walk away. Marcus stood there, hands clasped, heart pounding, not knowing how to exist in a moment where someone finally saw him. From that day on, small things began to change. Marcus noticed his schedule adjusted slightly, allowing him to leave earlier on the nights his son had school events. His broken work boots were quietly replaced with a voucher. His suggestions about building safety, once ignored, were suddenly implemented. None of it was announced. None of it was performative. It was as if Evelyn Carter had decided that remembering kindness meant practicing it. But the real shift came weeks later, when Marcus was called in again, this time to discuss an opportunity. Evelyn had done her research. She knew about his wife. She knew about his son. She knew about the degree in engineering he'd never finished because life had collapsed too fast. She offered him a chance to move into a daytime operations role, one that paid more, one that came with tuition assistance, one that respected the man behind the uniform. Marcus felt something crack open inside him, a mix of gratitude and grief, because for the first time since his wife's death, the future didn't look like a narrow hallway with no doors. Life didn't become perfect overnight. There were still days Marcus collapsed into bed fully clothed, days his son asked questions he didn't know how to answer, days the memory of that hospital room came back uninvited. But there were also mornings with sunlight instead of alarms, school pickups instead of apologies, dinners eaten slowly instead of rushed. There were moments when his son laughed without restraint, when Marcus realized that being seen had changed the way he saw himself. Evelyn, for her part, never spoke publicly about that night. But people noticed she drank less at company events, noticed she listened more, noticed she stayed later just to make sure employees made it home safely. Trouble had nearly claimed her once, and grace had intervened in the form of a tired single father who expected nothing in return. Years later, when Marcus stood in a cap and gown, his son cheering louder than anyone else in the auditorium, he thought about that rainy night and how close everything had come to staying the same. He thought about how kindness wasn't loud or dramatic, how it often showed up quietly, asked for nothing, and changed everything anyway. If this story is making you feel something right now, if it's reminding you that small choices can echo for years, please stay with us. Just before the ending, take a moment to comment and share what this story made you feel or who it reminded you of. Near the end of the ceremony, Marcus scanned the crowd and saw Evelyn standing near the back, clapping softly, eyes bright with something like pride. No words were exchanged. None were needed. Some debts aren't repaid with money or favors, but with lives gently nudged back onto their feet. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that goodness still exists in quiet corners of the world, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope tonight. Sometimes all it takes to change a life is one person who refuses to forget.